So here we are. Welcome. I'm super happy really to start this conversations with Lee Hibbard. How are you, Lee?
Fine, thank you. Hello to everybody.
Where are you based now?
In Strasbourg, in France.
You are Strasbourg. So you know, and I'm not going to spend too long time to explain about what is the EAVI conversations, a space to reflect about the issues that we all care about. You can, if you want more information about us, EAVI, and the EAVI conversations, you can go on our websites, and this is. I think that in the chat maybe we'll put some links. Let me just remind you that these are sessions generally one-to-one that we'll have every Tuesdays at 4 and every Thursday at 6, both with experts, international ones with a lot of knowledge like Lee, and also activists and YouTubers in more on the Thursday sessions. We do this also within the umbrella of our food menu campaign. That is what we launched a while ago, is on the metaphor of media as a kind of food that gets to us through the screens. Could be good, could be bad. So the media literacy in that sense is the capacity of selecting the good food. We'll have questions and answers. We'll also put a couple of polls out just to try to interact with you. These are, in respect of last year, more intended to the general public rather than just to the media literacy community. We are live on a number of social media, YouTube and LinkedIn and Twitter, Instagram. I think we also do something, and obviously here on Zoom. We'll discuss for about 40 minutes. We will make, for your information, a brief report of the outcomes of all this conversation. So, Lee, let's go back and start immediately. The reason I'm going to read a bit your bio. I will shorten it a bit because you are really have done so many things in the past, but you have two of the characteristics that make you a perfect guest for us. One, you have knowledge, experience, you have worked on these issues. When I say these issues, it means the media, internet governance, is freedom of expression and human rights and so forth. And you have this international perspective, having worked, and you are still now is working for foundation for international organization, the Council of Europe. You have had the privilege somehow to be informed, to exchange with all sorts of stakeholders, and we are very much looking forward to what you can tell us. To be fair, I read a little bit of your bio. You are a senior fellow at the Diplo Foundation. This is also another good thing about us. It's a non-for-profit foundation, which has been established by the governments of Malta and Switzerland and works to improve global governance and international policy development. So you are a regular lecturer, especially on artificial intelligence related issues. That is one of the main thing that we are going to talk about today, on human rights and artificial intelligence and governance. You have also a position within the Council of Europe as in the unit of the biotechnics, and if we will have time, also would be nice to to see is the health implications and COVID and all the stuff related to healthcare and artificial intelligence. Before is, this is one when we first met, is you have done for a long time the internet governance strategies on behalf of the Council of Europe. For different mandates, so you have really, I could go on and on. Is responsible for the development of pan-European human rights guidelines to internet service provider, for online games provider. You were at the forefront of European policy, network neutrality, freedom of expression, the protection of children's rights, also children's rights. If we have time, it would be good to touch upon. So let's evidently you have a number of educational background as well. So Lee, let's start with the following, if you agree. We read artificial intelligence is everywhere. Is articles in research, fantastic opportunities. But where is it actually? Artificial intelligence in our life, in my life? I cannot really see it.
Well, thank you, Paolo, and hello to everybody who's watching. AI is something which has been around for a long time. I mean, it's not new, first of all. It's gone through summers and I think winters, as they say in terms of the jargon. And now we're in this big curve of expansion. You read a lot about it in the newspapers. In our lives, I think it's talked about as a standalone thing, like it's sitting on the table, and then suddenly it disappears into services, and we forget about it. And you're right, it's used for different things, to autocomplete your searches. When you type in a search, it will
before coming to what is it, in fact, is that this is one of the. I'm curious to find out on whether you, and when I mean you now is the participants, would be able to explain what is artificial intelligence. I will also ask you, but maybe Laura can also ask this question to the people out there, because my feeling is that we don't really know what is artificial intelligence. How would you explain if we were all your children and is to a person, a child of 10 years old? What is it, artificial intelligence? Why should we worry about or be happy about it? Is we give a minute for people to reply. There are all sorts of things. People that think that are robots, hardware, or something that is more software related. How would you, while this goes on, how would you define it?
Me?
You.
Me, okay. Well, I mean, it's software. It's software which runs. You throw lots of data at it. So you throw lots of pictures of cats and dogs at it, and eventually, you label the image of the cat as a cat and the image of a dog as a dog. For example, a silly example. And if you throw lots and lots of data at that, lots of pictures of it, for example, at the software will just simply recognize that these are cats and these are dogs. So it learns to, in a very basic way, it learns to classify, categorize different images. And it's been very successful in saying, this is a cat and this is a dog. And you see it in healthcare. This medical scan reveals certain anomalies compared to another scan which has no anomalies. So I think that, at the very basic level, it learns to understand left from right, cat from dog.
Mm. And do you so is the people out there is only 15% of those they say that they know what is it, they will be able to explain it, but the majority is a bit confused about the concept. Even some experts, isn't it?
Well, I mean, if I may, you know, even now, if you read in the newspapers, some of the use of AI in you know, like the Twitter feeds, etc., leaning towards right-wing tweets as opposed to left-wing tweets, it's been said that it cannot be explained why this is happening, why this prioritization is happening. So this is the issue. This is where it gets difficult, is that it becomes very difficult to understand how these things function and to explain that. And if it's difficult to explain, then it becomes worrying.
Exactly. So if we cannot frame, say, the issues, is a bit worrying. No, if you don't have a common or shared vision or definition about what we are talking about, it's difficult to grasp it, no? Or even to decide which rules or whether it will be good or bad for us.
Sure, but I mean, it depends. I mean, yeah, but I mean, you know, how we use technology. You know, it's always been the case. So you know, you throw things out there. You know, we started with cars, maybe you know, back in the early 1900s, but they didn't have seatbelts. We just drove our cars around. I guess there were many accidents, and then suddenly we decided to say, "Oh, I think we need seatbelts." So they came later. So, you know, it's about trial and error. And of course, in AI, you know, you use it in search, use it on Netflix, use it on Spotify to recommend things on social media, and they're useful to prompt or you know, recommendations and certain posts over other posts.
But it can also fail, no? I was reading an article by which is in the Netherlands is an algorithm that decided that 10,000 families were cheating with getting child allowances, and therefore they stop. But then it has been found out that the machine was wrong.
Well, that's in public services. There is the issue that if you use this AI in terms of sorting out who gets what benefit, and this has happened, you know, there's a risk that if you don't take into consideration certain factors, if it goes wrong, then, you know, someone might not receive a benefit, or something might happen which could be very difficult for the person or the family who is on the line who needs that. So, for example, or it could be to do with a job which is decided, or a credit score for a loan. These things are sort of automated in some respects, and if the machine says no, then it could be difficult for the person who's receiving that no. So the risks are high in some cases, and that's the issue.
And you say that this is not only valid for commercial services, which but also is a bit more worrying when you mention about public services. We should cover or promote our public good. Do people really need all this artificial intelligence?
Well, I mean, it's like any society is evolving. We love technological progress. Automating really basic tasks is in our DNA, isn't it? I mean, you know, we want to make things more efficient, and you know, if we can save money, and we can stop people from, you know, doing certain very menial tasks, then let's do that. That's the name of the game, isn't it?
But yeah, I mean, private gains are quite clear. To me, the public benefits are a bit less.
Yeah. In terms of the public benefits, Paolo, you're right. I mean, that's why, you know, I think if you can't explain it, then, you know, should you use it? You know, I think it depends on the level of risk. If it's a high risk situation involving, you know, someone's life or someone's welfare, someone's health, then that's high risk, and therefore, you know, one has to take responsibility for that risk, let's say. And so, you know, you can't just let that thing run in the wild, let's say. So I think there's a responsibility where it matters to take more responsibility. You know, if you don't understand it, you know, that's a responsibility to then let it loose.
And this is a bit the way the European Commission is a proposal on artificial intelligence assessing risk is going to, no? I mean, the proposal that will be proposed to the European Parliament to be later approved is a difficult domain, isn't it? Because it's a very slippery algorithm technology. is something that policymakers don't really master, isn't it? Obviously, then.
Well, I mean, the thing is that, Paolo, like everybody, I mean, you want to see progress, but you also want to balance the progress with the risks. And we're all human. We all make comparisons. We all make decisions based upon what we know. You know, are we going to go down that ski slope or not? Depending on how good you are at skiing. You know, whichever situation. So it's about balancing that risk and that benefit.
You don't think that it was better before? I mean, before the advent of this technology, obviously.
I don't think there's any point in going backwards. I mean, you know, I spoke to some young people yesterday in an event, and you know, tech, social media, it's here to stay, whatever you call it. I mean, now you use anywhere you go regarding in a COVID situation, you have to show your QR code to connect with your friends. You have to go on social media. So it's become not a choice but an obligation for many people. So I don't think saying, "Oh, it was better back then," is really the thing to do. Really, I think that's we are where we are.
Is so we are where we are. Where is no, in a way there is a lack. Do you feel that there is a lack of policy or regulation? Is there is no formal commitment by companies to respect? I mean, the rules that are there, or human rights. What do you think?
Companies are, you know, what's the DNA of a company? A company is there to make money. So its main goal is to make money.
Is it when they grew up to this size and dimension? Can they do what they want?
Well, the big tech, the GAFAM, the big tech started with different slogans like, you know, move fast and break things, don't do evil, unite the world, whatever. They had good meaning, community standards, and good meaning at the beginning, but then they get taken over by economic gain and dominance and shareholders, etc. So they get sucked into this what's it called, surveillance capitalism, you know, keeping you glued to the screen.
Now is grab our attention. That is the business model that is working. Are these really points of despair somehow valid? There is a line of thought that is the surveillance, is machine privacy that is gone, somehow difficulties to protect is our data. We are not even aware, or we certainly no one is asking our permission to use our personal data. Is it? Is it so bad that the threat in that respect? No, you are right saying we have a balance, but we are in this period in which things can go either way.
Well, I mean, you know, there isn't much of a choice for many people. So, you know, if all your friends are on Facebook, you go on Facebook. You know, why? So what? The question is, so what? You know, why should I care? Well, you know, if you don't see what's happening behind the screen, then why should you care? You put your blind trust in a company, fine. You know, the company doesn't come back to you causing you problems. They just provide you a free service. So, you know, if you explore further, then you see more the situation regarding data and how data is used, recombined, and then it's used to create new correlations about people, profiles, groups of people, as you saw with the elections in different countries and the way that can influence how people vote. I think what's really key here, Paolo, is the way that you can, I think the way that technology can sort of ping, can sort of, you know, can affect your emotions, can affect your feelings. And there's lots of examples of people feeling anxious when they're not using social media or, you know, or on screens. There's this pull between the person and the screen, and that's been, I mean, I think that this whole area of screen and people, this fusion, is based upon learning from gambling and people who gamble and become addicted. There is this compulsion somewhere, and I think it's very strong in young people who are, you know, trying to assert themselves, their identity, trying to understand who they are, trying to associate, become friends, have networks. I think all of those things, it's very powerful in younger people, and I think that addiction is something to think about. I also think that when you think about the AIs, the algorithms running behind these, the recommendations on posts and what post appears first, second, third, it's quite well known, that the model is to keep your eyes glued on the screen, to keep your attention as long as possible. And if the AI's ultimate objective is to keep you there, then eventually, with lots and lots of effort and tries, it will find that you get certainly shocked or look at certain content more than others. It may be negative content, and it might keep you there. So, or maybe you're anxious and you want to know more about how you look and your body or whatever. This thing about Instagram and body shape, etc. For young girls in particular. But this reinforces this anxiety and this emotion. And I think young people are quite vulnerable to that, and that's very worrying.
So the well-being of people as individuals there are a lot of studies and research about this. That they feel inadequate, sad, or depressed, whether they use or they use too much or too little, or they feel put aside. With children, is not getting any better, isn't it? On the contrary, is at this age. There is a reason why certain is that to be on social media you should be more than 13, but it's difficult to check.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a parent, so I mean, as a parent, it's tough. There's a lot of peer pressure, a lot of things that kids they want and they learn and they demand are from their peers, not from their parents. So a lot of discussion at the dinner table and other places has to happen. And that depends. I mean, that really depends on the parents, the parenting, the style. I mean, some just let them go loose. Some completely deprive kids of their phones. I've done both. I've tried every combination possible. But I think it's just a question of keep talking and as funny as it may sound, I have a WhatsApp group with my kids and I share information and even studies about these issues with them in the hope that they will read it.
Well, it's already a step forward, isn't it? I was having a conversation about this subject with Sonia Livingston last year, and she was saying that there are indeed parents that try to embrace technology because you cannot be left out. Is at the same time you have to know to learn how to use it. Others that refuse it completely.
Yeah, I think I just want to point out as a parent that some things are quite good examples. I don't have when my kids are around me, I put the phone away. I just don't have it in my hand. I try not to have it in my hand. Okay, so they don't see me with a phone.
If you go to a playground, I don't know if you ever do, and you observe not the kids that are playing, but the parents that are all on their telephones.
Exactly. So the thing is, I'm very conscious of that. There's no phones at the dinner table, for example. After a certain time in the evening, I take the phones away if I can. It depends on their age of the kids, because sometimes they get too old, it's not possible. But I try different tactics. But certainly, if you lead by example, you can mitigate a bit the place of screens in your home.
Okay.
But not elsewhere, of course.
Laura is reminding me that we can put on the second poll, and I also, as a reminder, on not just on Zoom, but if you have questions for Lee, you can put them forward, and then they will reach me somehow. I haven't understood how, but eventually they will do it. I think this is a very, very interesting topic to go a step further. On one side is that there are certain worries. Is inevitably we have to deal with technology. There are a number of benefits, of course. So there's no point neither to despair, not to find easy solutions, because there is not a silver bullet, isn't it? So we are going to leave this for the next years or so. And talking about the future, is that the question that we are asking here is is on whether people, and I invite people to reply to the poll, is just 1, 2, or 3, is do you think that artificial intelligence will be more positive or negative impacts on society in the next 5 years? Optimistic, skeptical, or a little bit of both. So they are quite optimistic here. Is almost half of them is, and very few are think that is going to be a disaster. Well, what about you, Lee?
I think there's a lot of hype around this. I think that first of all, you have to embrace it because it's there. It's not going to change. No one's going to withdraw all the AI products on the market. It's just not going to happen. So better to get used to it. I think what needs to be done is to make sure that you're aware of it, that it can be explained. If it can be explained, then fine,
But these are two assumptions. It can be explained, and you said at the very beginning, we say that it's quite difficult to achieve. And being aware is also a very, very difficult condition to be in.
Well, we don't have enough time to spend clicking. We don't have enough time to understand the terms and conditions of service of platforms. When we click accept, we don't read them, do we? So we just simply get on with it. We have too little time available to compare and contrast information. Our literacy level is limited. We're not able to do it all by any means. So I guess we expect as people, as families, as individuals, that the state and the companies take a responsibility for what they do. So that's the big thing, is that how far, what level of responsibility, what regulation. And no one wants to kill innovation. Everyone wants to see the society thrive and progress. So it's that balance. I know it's not meant to be I'm not trying to not sit on the fence, but it's just about how you moderate that. So there's going to be abuse. Abuse is everywhere, isn't it? If you're given something and you use it, you can abuse it unless you're told not to abuse it. With a platform, social media, there are age limits.
Why does it matter truly?
What do you mean? Why does what matter?
Why is important for you? Is which is the port why is so important this development? How does it affect? Will it affect important parts of our lives? In which way? Why should we bother?
Well, because I think if you look at the way that many live to make money, of course. And so it's a way to survive, of course. It's a way to look forward to progress. People thrive for progress. The futures of markets, the future is about, I think we're beyond the value of the value of data and the issue of privacy. I think if you read certain books now, it's about people's experiences, trying to predict what they may do next. It's trying to even influence what you might do next. Actually, it's about influence, Paolo. How can I influence you to buy that product? How can I make you think? So actually, it's touching upon this question of what's the next markets. And I think the next markets are linked to behaviors which haven't happened. And so AI helps to find out how to trigger your emotions, to trigger your thinking and behavior, and to try to predict what you do next. On one way, I think the assumption is judging from, knowing you, that we have in common is that we do trust people. No, people are generally good people, but these days they are easily manipulable, and we are, because the techniques are so sophisticated, because it's somehow we feel disempowered, which is the contrary of what media literacy is supposed to do, empowering people so that they can engage. But we feel a bit powerless. Well, I think that's a good point, Max Paolo. You this is a good point now, because with COVID, I think that from what I've learned so far is that this uncertainty that we're living in messes with people's brains. I think we're not good with uncertainty. We need certainty. And I think we're better and we're able to do more when there's a certain feeling that we have a framework around ourselves. When we look around us and we see uncertainty about vaccinations, about masks, about government responses, about staying at home, etc., then that creates more anxiety than anything. And I think that we need to feel in control. I mean, feeling in control means having rules, a framework, and a certain stability in life. And you know, critical thinking, literacy, all the things that we know and love, of course, are very, very important, comparing and contrasting. But it's one part. It's one part of the toolbox. It's not. You can't. We're not an island living alone. We need to form part of an ecosystem which is stable.
And within being pragmatic is as this situation is a bit, I mean, to say the least, in a flow, is constantly changing. We need not to be overwhelmed. No, if this is what you are saying. So it's doing our little bit to translate our good intentions into maybe small actions. No, is to find a kind of whether is. I mean, we cannot solve issues. I don't know whether you have listened to yesterday or this climate change debates about and Barack Obama also is we have to not to be overwhelmed by this despair. Of course, the challenges are huge, but there is something little that we can do. Is somebody is asking we can go back to this, but somebody is asking from Brazil whether you are in favor of regulating social media, and if so, which kind of regulation?
Oh, I think personally, the time is right for regulating social media. There's a lot of pressure on social media to do things. You've seen the invitations for Facebook to the US Congress, the whistleblower from Facebook now, who was yesterday in the European Parliament. The pressure is mounting, but the pressure's been mounting for years. You know, when I think back to Brazil and about the last presidential elections and the use of WhatsApp, you know, bundled with, you know, very basic mobile packages and the influence of WhatsApp, for example, you know, the difference is so strong. Something has to happen to create greater balance. So you know, what type of regulation I can't say, but what we have now is not enough. I think there needs to be a greater respect for freedom of expression, freedom of assembly and association. You know, free and fair elections. Free and fair elections is very important, and that means what it means. So if that means that platforms need to respect free and fair elections, then something has to happen.
There is a sort of consensus nowadays, even from platforms to have some rules, but then it's better to have good rules rather than just rules. And I am personally very much in favor of having is very precise and rules, because it's I mean, to say one thing is to say unfair that is this big tech they pay less tax than a cheese producer is so that this is going to come to somebody talking about this is. Somebody's asking on what's your opinion about virtual influencers. So you were sort of mentioning about WhatsApp groups, bots, machines that pretend to be human and therefore influence or pollute the debate. I mean, any reflections on this?
Well, I mean, this is this stuff about sort of disinformation, information disorder, about flooding the market or places with information which is false, maybe intended to be harmful, and creates chaos and confusion, let's say. So that's that again. It goes back to the point that there is a certain power in the narrative, in what's put out there, whether it's anti-vaccination or this or that, but it's definitely having an influence. We can see it everywhere. So something has to be understood there, that these influencers, if they're automated influencers, I mean, I'll give you an example. A few weeks ago or a few months ago on BBC, there was there's a girl called Mariana Springs who did a study on. She created a fake troll, and also she created a fake profile of somebody, and then she basically added a few groups onto her social platform, and she just let the thing run, and she waited to receive the recommendations from the platform. And of course, they were misogynistic, they were abusive, they were almost inciting violence, and so this was particularly targeted towards women, but not only women, and definitely more women than men. So it goes to show you that this type of content sells. Publicity maybe that part of the commercial model is driven by this sort of content, unfortunately. So it's there and it's automated. And it's very unfortunate.
Again, concerns are quite clear, and when you add the issues like how our brain works and emotions, and the fact that it is not just a rational, logical process, so the limits of critical thinking, for instance, in that respect, and is very difficult. At least we should have more transparency, more accountability of from the service providers, whoever they are, private or commercial. And here I see is Abdul Kadir is asking which is the best online diet for someone that spends so much time in front of the computer. I don't know which are the statistics now, but we spend 10 hours a day in front of this thing.
Well, if you count your time at work, yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
You say that for your kid is the best diet is just to put the telephone away, or not to
you mean in terms of, well, I mean, when you say work, I mean working on a text is not looking at social media. If that, I mean, looking at a screen, of course, screens to work, I mean, that's a little bit different. But the diet has to be I know it sounds obvious, but just put the phone away, if you can. I know it's more difficult for young people, but there has to be limits, I think, and there has to be limits which is reasonable, and that the kids understand at least somewhat. And if one keeps talking about these things, eventually the messages will get through. It may take time. And but you have to keep going for it. I think the weaker way out is just to decide, let people do what they want to do. But I mean, for me, I mean, it's quite rude to sit at the table with somebody and have your phone out, looking at your phone. I mean, there are, you eat with somebody, for example, you expect some contact and some sort of civil discourse. There are minimum levels of behavior.
I remember that Silvio Berlusconi in one of his interviews, he was saying that he forbid his kids to watch television, and you understand why. Or other people are saying that the poor people have a big screen television, and the rich people have a rich library instead. So it's one diet.
All the it's well known that many of the children of the very big tech people are forbidden phones, for example, forbidden access, because they, there's lots of internal studies which show that the addiction is there.
I have many questions and many more coming from other different social media, so I think we'll have to find a way to how can we answer to all of this. But I just mention one because I'm interested, also because of your background, to have your opinion, and it's related to somebody is asking about freedom of speech and this famous balance is his speech, having an opinion, but and Trump, the social media having switch him off, etc., etc. Is the question to be a bit broader on this is the following. The Human Rights Declaration is stating that as a human right, you can speak out. But at the same time, they also say that people are they have the right to receive information, and is, and this has been done in 57 or 47, whenever, is 50 years ago. So but already there was a sense that people have the right to receive the correct information. Is it, I mean, pushing a bit too far? Do I have the right to be informed correctly? A human right.
So how do you define, tell me how you define informed correctly?
Yeah, well, then we have to work on that. But could the principle still apply? I mean, to be, I don't know, to be exposed or to be to multiple sources of information, or for social media to label things that are controversial. That could be different.
Yeah, but listen, Paolo, the freedom of expression and to information, and the freedom to think. I mean, the freedom to think is really an absolute right, but the freedom of expression has limitations. But the freedom to seek, to receive and impart information and ideas is really, as everybody says, is fundamental. It's a cornerstone of that democracy that we all fight for. I mean, those words you shouldn't be used too lightly. They're extremely important. I mean, the freedom that this all, at least in the European context, this means the freedom to shock and offend and disturb also. Of course, those are words from a particular judgment from many years ago. But it just shows you how important it is to have expression information, even if it offends, shocks, and disturbs. Of course, it shouldn't incite violence, and it shouldn't create hate, which leads to terrible things. There are lines to be drawn. But I mean, better to err on the side of freedom and shocking, offending, and disturbing sometimes, not all, than to have nothing, because you start to put limits, and the limits have to be interpreted, and they can be interpreted downwards towards less freedom. And in certain countries, very easy to put in laws which create censorship and restrict the amount of information that the people receive.
Yeah, is a conversation that I hope that we'll have also. We can follow on. The fact is also that is on this basis is the some content is put forward which is truly is damaging or done or on purpose to deceive us. I put you forward one last question and. Because then I would like to conclude to ask you is what would you like to see happening, or how do you see which are your suggestions? The last question is asked from Naomi, and if I understand what do you think about removing anonymity I suppose on those that post on internet and social media, so that there is more transparency, more reliability of information. The sources, say.
Yeah, well, it's a good question, but real name registration is not new. I mean, that's a discussion which has been had many times. I think that anonymity or not, I don't think we're fully anonymous. I mean, it just takes one or two more data points to know that Paolo, that you're Italian and you're living in Brussels, for example, that you like this or you don't like that. So it's very easy to de-anonymize you from one or two more data points. Anonymity is something, I think, which has to be taken with a pinch of salt. I don't believe that we're fully anonymous.
Thank you for mentioning this pinch of salt that relates perfectly well with our food menu campaign. Lee, what is we say at the very beginning, you are very knowledgeable. You have dealt with these issues for the last 20 years. You have heard many voices and opinion, and what would you like to see happening? Is tomorrow you open your newspaper? Well, paper newspaper don't exist anymore, apparently, or they do, but people don't read it on the benches in the park. But to say, that would be great. Is it utopian to? I don't want to ask you how you see the future, because you have already said that in a way we are in this this is the status quo. Is a long way, but we can take one direction or the other.
Well, I mean, I think that what has to happen is a great sense of responsibility. I think we're still going through the teething stages of these issues regarding AI, etc., and how it works, like a car without a seatbelt. But I'm hoping that something will come along which will allow it to create more balance. What is balance? And when there's balance, it'll be okay. But I mean, where you have automated hate, generated automated misogyny, when there is like we're all biased when you create AI in your mirror image, because we're all biased, we all have values from in our person. Inevitably, the machines are going to reflect the people who create it. So a massive attempt has to be made to create more balance in the data which trains the AI, and that's where the question of responsibility, and then I think explanation matters a lot. We really have to take charge of that. I mean, the other thing is that AI is it's more and more easy to access. It's cheaper to access. It can be used in everyday things, as you sort of said. So the question is how to keep that in check, to stop it being abused. It can be used for many good things, but the abuse is there. So I think we need to be very vigilant about that. But I don't know how that can be managed. I mean, the earlier question about the regulation of regulation is a law or something which can say, oh, you can do that, social media company, and you can't do that. I mean, they could self-regulate, like media self-regulated. Have they self-regulated enough? Maybe they need to do more self-regulation. Maybe it's nothing to do with the state. I mean, Facebook has an oversight board, which and I read recently that overturned 4 of its 5 decisions to take down content. So there is an oversight mechanism which may be working, who knows? But I think more efforts, whichever the regulation or self-regulation, needs to be had. That means more responsibility. We need to the understanding of that. And I think, you know, it's easy to say, but we need to spend more time, you know, hardwiring in human rights reflections, your rights and your freedoms and your values, your dignity, your integrity, your freedom to think into these things. I know that's hard because, you know, it's hard to extrapolate that and to discuss. We do it every day in different places, but more of that needs to be done. We need to throw more and more and more at that.
But I very much appreciate is when you say that when it goes down or high to fundamental rights and values, no, is to recognize, to start from which are our no, is the values in which we recognize ourselves, why we are doing this, and then it gives sense, more sense to the action, the actions that could follow. Or it would be more clear who could be the allies who could help us out in this, and who's the enemy? Who's the enemy here, Lee?
I think that's too easy, Paolo. I mean, you know, I don't think that there is an enemy. I don't think people have a master plan in a company to destroy people's lives or to really hurt people's lives in some way. I think they just do what they do because that's what they do. You know, if I bake cakes for a living, that's what I do. I bake cakes for a living. You know, going back to the food metaphor, but you know, I mean, it's just, you know, humans doing what they do, and that's it. And I mean, we sometimes need to be protected from ourselves. You know, that's why we create roads with traffic lights and seatbelts on cars. We just have to learn maybe a bit more quickly. And you know, if it gets too difficult and there's too much stuff running around which is in an automated fashion and it's not explainable and it's risky, then we need to be a bit safe from ourselves.
So it is a process, and obviously
it's a process.
Is going to take some time. Is overall, judging from our little focus group, is people want or are willing to invest in technology. No one want to go backwards. still there is a sense that the knowledge or the understanding of people on the consequences of these technologies is still quite low. I mean,
yeah, but when you drive a car, you pass a test to drive on the roads. You don't pass a test to use social media.
Is somebody, I don't know, Karl Popper, talking about licenses, was suggesting a driving license to drive a country. In order to be a politician, you should demonstrate first at least that you are competent, like a taxi driver. And social media that influence so much the quality of life of people should not be
Yeah, but I
selected
think
just.
that you're right. But I mean, but the difference with a car and a social media is that, you know, a social media post shouldn't kill you, really. A car might. But I mean, again, this is all relative. I mean, these are just words. You know, there's no magic bullet here. There's no silver bullet to finding out how to do things better. I think you're right. It's a process. Before, with the media, we came together, reading certain media together. You know, whether it be a newspaper or a limited form of television channel, and we came together, and that was sort of an island of trust or an island of legitimacy in which people discuss things. Now that we don't have that, I think what's happening is, as you know, we're all in these bubbles, we're all in these echo chambers, we're reinforcing a certain narrative in our bubbles, and that's creating separation, isolation, anxiety, anger, all the different emotions. And that's the thing which has changed. That's a big change. And we need to find a common place in order to come back, not necessarily online. I think, you know, people are craving social contacts, particularly, you know, in a COVID situation. And, you know, I mean, I was surprised that during Halloween last weekend, there were so many kids coming to the door, more than usual, for sweets. I had the feeling there was this post-lockdown, post-COVID situation. People need to make contact with people. And I think that's key. We need to contact with people more, and not necessarily through screens. It's like we should have, you know, a no screen rule and have more physical contacts, safe physical contacts.
That's first of all, I have to reveal that I was for Halloween as well with my smallest kid is knocking the doors, and we have a bunch of sweets, and this is also a very nice point when you say that we need to make available spaces, even physical spaces, for people to have more human connections. I think is a very nice message to put forward. So thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
I have all these people around that are keeping telling me 2 minutes, 3 minutes but so that's how it works. But yeah, I don't know whether you want to notwithstanding the people that are moving around, do you want to say a little bit more about something before we conclude?
I think that it's worth bearing in mind that when things are automated, like an AI service, AI-induced driven service, there's no reasoning in that AI system. There's no lateral general intelligence floating around, which has a certain wisdom, like people have wisdom. It's just doing what it's doing, you know. It's very agnostic. It's very cold. It's just correlating and sometimes reinforcing its learning to give you what the objective of the AI is. So it's very clinical, and it's not human, and it's not necessarily going to learn beyond what its objective is. So that's okay when it's a very basic thing. It just matters when it becomes more important for humans, and it affects people's lives in a much more meaningful way. So much more has to be done to be careful regarding this automation thing, because a lot of coders and the whole thing about technologies is trying to automate tasks so we can do things more efficiently, and not, you know, to have a better life, really. So just how far that automation should go, I think, you know, we don't know, we're a slave to ourselves, and I'm concerned about it running away a bit, the whole thing, and you know, our emotions being too much affected. But I don't want to end on a bad note. I think there should be a balance, and we just have to get on with it. But we just have to call for a greater sense of responsibility, and we need to make sure that there is more, maybe more literacy behind, to know what's behind the screen. I'd like to see literacy about behind the screen, because once you know what's happening behind the screen, you can talk to your kids about it over dinner, and you can share that, and you can start to make inroads into thinking and critical thinking.
Yeah, that's very much media literacy, to understanding how and why is a noise a program is produced, and indeed who's behind, why is, which are their intentions, good or bad. Is, again, we don't want to be moralistic in any way, but no. I think is the tone, if I have received it as the other listener, is quite a positive one when you mention about reinforcing human and building on human connections, but also in the way that you know, to use automation to make life easier. This should be a guiding principle. So thank you, Lee. I just want to thank also the participants here and there. I have numbers here. Is more than 31 countries people are coming from. So we should think about it when we speak. Obviously, most of them are not English mother tongue, but I hope they have follow my perfect English accent. We can
just put the automated subtitles on.
As a last note, I want to remember that on Thursday is next Thursday. Let me see if I have the program anywhere. Is Giovanna, I don't have it. Yeah. So we have on Thursday at 6, we'll have Yannis Sarakatinatis, who is a YouTuber, and we'll talk about how the brain is working. And then next week we have Claire Wardle of Fast Draft. We'll talk with her more about disinformation and the state of affairs more in the USA, where she's based. And Letizia Parcalabescu, notwithstanding the name, is German, and again with her we'll talk about artificial intelligence. So thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Paolo.